Hello everyone, and welcome to what I am going to be calling Project Monotype. The rules are on screen right now. I may only use Pokemon of the type rolled randomly per playthrough, in this case water types. I may only use Pokemon available naturally up to that gym. Pokemon cannot exceed the level of the gym leader's ace. No healing items will be used in battle. Only moves available by that battle, i.e. TMs and HMs found by that gym. I'm going to have a ranking system on this. To get a green check, all the rules must be followed. A yellow check is granted if I'm able to beat that while breaking any of the rules. So if I break one or two of them, it gets a yellow check. While a red X is given if I'm unable to beat without breaking all the rules. Let's begin. First off is Brock. It was a really easy fight, naturally. At this point, we have Squirtle. Squirtle is the only Pokemon we have at this point, up until before Mount Moon. Naturally, when you think of Brock and you think of water types, with a Squirtle, it's just going to be Water Gun all the way through. So a very easy fight. There was little to know about it. The max level for Brock at this point is level 14, so Squirtle is set to that rather than any higher. It's going to end here shortly, so I will just let you watch the rest. So going from Brock into Misty here, this is a pretty easy fight still for water types. You do have Gyarados at this point, but most of this fight is going to be done with Wartortle. Wartortle does have Bite, so it is effective against the water types. It's a pretty easy fight in general. At this point, there isn't really any strategy. You're really just using Bite over and over. Having the two Pokemon, as long as you don't get completely demolished by Confuse, you can get through it relatively easy without any issue. That is how the rest of the fight goes. It's just going to be Bite all the way through. Thing with water types in Gen 1 is you basically have none outside of Gyarados and Wartortle until far later in the game. Once you get the Super Rod and Surf, then you can get quite a few more. But until that point, you only have those two. They're effective for the first two gyms, but after that point, it gets a bit difficult for the third and the fourth. But once you beat Surge and Erica, then you're free reign all the way to the end of the game, which you will see in this short playthrough. So Surge. Surge is not a fun one when it comes to dealing with water types. So at this point you do only have Gyarados and Wartortle. Being at the level cap of 24, they really don't have many moves to work with, not to mention that you just don't have TMs and HMs up to this point. As you can see, this footage is sped up quite a lot, just because it took a few wipes here. In the future, I'll decide whether or not if I want to show all the wipes, or if I'll just skip to the victorious one. Feel free to leave a comment on that if you have an opinion on that matter. But at least for this video, I left them in. So this is where the answer comes. Can I personally beat Pokemon Leafgreen with only water types? The answer is meh. According to the rules, I did fail this challenge at this point. I did have to use Pokemon from later on. I only broke one rule, though, to beat Surge and Erica. So, at that point, it is according to my rules, a yellow check. Sadly. Raichu is the problem candidate here. Between Shockwave and just the really high speed and double team, it makes it an incredibly hard Pokemon to take out. Not to mention being the final stage evolution form, it has quite a bit of health. Through all these resets, you'll see that it is Raichu that causes the problem for me. Pikachu, not too bad. Pikachu is pretty squishy, so it's not really that difficult. But yeah, that is where this comes. I will let this play, and then we'll come up to the successful round here shortly. So here is the successful Surge fight. You'll see that I've added Vaporeon, Shelder, and Krabby to the team. Ignore Diglett, it never gets used. It's just so you can use Cut to get into the gym. So I led off with Krabby, basically, because Krabby has access to Mud Shot to take out the original first two Pokemon, and then hopefully do as much damage to Raichu as possible. It naturally is a fairly weak Pokemon, so it doesn't survive long after it does take out those first two, but it does its job fairly well. The main issue is naturally Raichu. Raichu is just extremely fast because it is an evolved form and outspeeds Krabby. Not to mention double team makes it almost impossible for things to hit. It's really just a exercise in frustration trying to deal with this Raichu. They really went above and beyond setting up this fight for the early game, especially when you're running all water Pokemon, which naturally isn't a good idea. The fight does pretty much go to the wire. Raichu is just brutal, but it does come out on top. However, I do lose the challenge technically because of this. Having to use Krabby, Shelder, and Vaporeon means that I used Pokemon from after this gym. Technically, I shouldn't be able to get it at this point. So as we come up to Erica here, I removed all of the extra Pokemon from the party, and so it's just back to Wartortle and Gyarados here. As you can tell, however, it is sped up. I did struggle on this one again. Even with the... Oh, so Vaporeon is on the team at this point. You do get Eevee in Celadon, and you can get access to a Water Stone as well. So, 3 Pokemon now. Vaporeon, Gyarados, and Wartortle. But the extra addition of Vaporeon just doesn't really do much. At this point, all they have access to without TMs is Bite, pretty much. Not really any good attacks. You do have Water Pulse if you use the TM on it at this point, but that is it. So, not super helpful. Here you see me giving up, essentially. I saw the writing on the wall, went, took it out, put it back. So now we're back to the fight with the yellow checkmark team additions. And even then, still struggled a bit. It took a bit of patience to get through this fight. So coming up on the successful fight here, I lead with Gyarados just to take out Victory Bell. One thing to keep in mind in this fight is just the massive amount of status effects that go out. Her entire team is based on it, so you're pretty much guaranteed to just hit status effects over and over, like Paralyze, Sleep, Poison. Poison is obviously the one that you want because it doesn't interrupt your moves, but it does seem to favor Stun and Sleep overall. I do have Cloyster and Starmie on the team now. You do get Water Stones in Celadon, as far as I can remember. I might be wrong about that. As you see later on, I do end up being wrong about some things that give me a yellow check mark. I will speak about that when that shows up. But at this point, these are the 2 gyms that I did struggle with. And the answer is once again, can I beat Pokemon Leafgreen with just water types? No, I cannot. At least not without breaking the rules. I am not that good at Pokemon, sadly. Maybe as I do more of these challenges, I'll get better, but at the moment, I struggled. Anyway, here we go. We see Cloyster being MVP with Aurora Beam on Vileplume, and they finish off the fight for us with that, naturally, because Ice is pretty good against Grass. So as we come over into Koga, you will see the mistake that I was referencing earlier in the fact that Gyarados has Earthquake. I mistakenly thought that, like, Red and Blue, if I'm remembering correctly, you got Earthquake in Silphco, but that is not the case, as I found out later when I beat Giovanni and he gave me Earthquake after the 8th gym. So you don't get Earthquake until the 8th gym. I had Earthquake on Gyarados for the next 3-4 gyms. So that is a rule violation for me. At this point, however, I do have access to pretty much all my Pokemon, because you do get the Super Rod at this point, and then Koga also allows you to get Surf. So all of the Pokemon for Water type are available after this gym, which is nice. So at least in that regard, I did not violate any rules. But you can see that Gyarados is just really strong, especially with Earthquake at this point. So Sabrina is not that hard with the team we have. Between Blastoise and Gyarados both having Bite, you can pretty much just spam it all the way through. When one of them goes down, you can just pull out the other, and you're good to go. Especially since Kadabra, the Kadabra line is really squishy. Unlike in Red and Blue, where the line is just broken, in Fire Red and Leaf Green, it is actually fairly balanced. They are strong attackers, but because of that squishiness and the fact that we have access to Dark type now, it's just not very threatening at all. Not to mention, we do also have Vaporeon with Shadow Ball at this point. So, yeah, not really much trouble. Also Surf Spam. Surf Spam pretty much always wins the day. At this point, the Earthquake is still on Gyarados. I don't notice until I beat the 8th gym. So that mistake goes all the way through. I apologize for that. I will try to do better research in the future, especially as we play through these games and we get to newer ones that I know better. It will just improve naturally. So as we beat Sabrina, we come to the hardest gym for the water types, the fire type gym. It's the strategy here is pretty obvious. No issues. It's just surf spam. Gyarados pretty much one-shots the entire team for Blaine. I feel kind of bad for Blaine, just because Fire type isn't very good in the first generation. Like Charizard is good, and I mean they're all good on their own, but it's a lot of monotypes. Ponyta and Rapidash just aren't very good Pokemon. They're a bit fast, but that's it. And of course, Arcanine is decent, but overall, he just struggles against most types. Maybe not bug type, but water type, he absolutely struggles against here. And I will come back once we get to Giovanni. So here is Giovanni. He's got a kind of a mixed team. He's supposed to be like the rock ground, or I guess the ground gym leader since Brock is rock, but he does have Kangaskhan. I do have a counter for that in Brick Break on Blastoise, but otherwise it's just Surf Spam again. It's really interesting how with water types you have a lot of gyms that are just really easy between Blaine, Brock, Giovanni, Koga. Like they're all really easy gyms, but then you go to Surge and Erica and it's just rough. Absolutely brutal. And without many moves that early in the game that you can choose from, there's not many good strategies. It's just a lot of suffering. If the physical special split had happened at this point, maybe you could come up with some like plans for dropping special attack on Erica or something. But in Fire and Leaf Green, they're just pain on water types. But Giovanni is coming to the end, at which point he will give us Earthquake, which then makes my team legal after that. But at this point, it is not according to my rule set, and I apologize for that. I will do better in the future. I will see you again when we get to the Elite Four. One thing I didn't expect was Lorelei actually being kind of difficult. I don't have many memories of her being hard, but it's also been a long time since I've played these games. At least being level matched, I guess that's probably why. Dugong just kind of had some problems. At this point, I start using the spike strategy, and then I also have Cloyster set up for a Toxic Stall. The Toxic Stall I tried to get going later on. It didn't really work very well, but we'll get there. I am not a great battler in this game. I'm more of a collector. I like to collect Pokemon rather than just battle Pokemon. So a lot of these strategies I know of, but I'm not great at executing. But Lorelei overall, she ends up going through about half the team. But she wasn't too bad. None of the Elite Four or Champion really challenge us at this point. Because you do have a fully formed team with good movesets. You can counter pretty much everything in one way or another. So there's not really any extreme challenge at this point. It's just going through the motions. Thunderbolt on Gyarados really does carry us through a few of our Pokemon, like Dugong and that. Jinx kind of causes trouble later on, but overall not too bad. Poor, poor, poor Bruno. I feel really bad for him. Not only is half of his team in this game rock types, but the fighting types just really aren't that great in this game. We have Starmie with Psychic on top of having just Surf and all these really good attacks with our water types. There's pretty much nothing he can do, especially the Onyxes. They're just toast. Started off with setting up spikes on Cloyster and just going from there. Pretty easy. This fight does not take long at all. Agatha. Oh, Agatha. So, one thing that Agatha makes me realize is that Ghost type in Fire Red and Leaf Green is going to suck. The Gen 1 Ghost type, it's Gengar. There's pretty much nothing else. It's just one type. You have one line for the entire type. So that will be an interesting one. Most likely, it will involve, first off, starting with Ghastly. I'll have to put that in, but yeah. Multiple Gengars, maybe? We'll have to see how that is once I get to it. But this fight, I realized that Gengar has Levitate in this game. I totally forgot about that, so I tried to Earthquake it, and naturally that just didn't work. But it does go pretty simply. Gyarados is just really strong. He is a very good Pokemon. I should mention that all of the Pokemon have randomized EVs and IVs. They aren't maxed. So I tried to make it a bit fair that way. So even though Gyarados is a really strong Pokemon, it's not a perfect Gyarados set by any means. So yep. On to Lance next, I believe. And that should be a interesting one. So Lance is the Dragon type trainer, and similar to Ghost types, Dragon types have only one line in first generation. It kind of makes you wonder what they were thinking with some of these type additions when they only have one line to make use of them. Like, they could have just had Gengar be poison type and not have Ghost. They could have had the Dragonite line been like water type, maybe, or flying type, rather than having an entire typing just for one line of Pokemon. I'm not sure why they did it that way, but they did it that way, and the reason what that led to is that Lance has Charizard and Gyarados. Does he have Charizard? I might be misremembering. It's only been like an hour since I played this, and I'm already forgetting what what Pokemon Lance has. He has Charizard at some point in one of the games, I'm pretty sure, but and then Aerodactyl on top of that. Aerodactyl is a really cool Pokemon. Rock flying. It's actually a really good Pokemon, especially after the physical special split happens. It's super fast. But Surf. The omnipotent Surf. Forever ending all lines that it crosses. Lance is pretty easy. I do try to Toxic Stall Dragonite later, and that completely fails. I'm just not a battler. It basically finished me off almost instantly. So, next up is Blue, or since I'm in Leaf Green, Red. Coming up next. I'll see you then. Blue, oh blue. So, compared to fighting red in Gen 2 and Gen 4, the teams are kind of similar, but they're different at the same time. He does have a good dispersion of Pokemon, but at this point, between Thunderbolt on Gyarados taking out Pidgeot, Psychic on Starmie, just dozen Venusaur. I have tons of answers on the team, and Blue just doesn't really have much that can stack up against it. Not to mention how strong Gyarados is. That's just a reoccurring theme. Gyarados is very strong. In future generations, I'm going to try and not use Gyarados since I used him here. But, yeah. Blue goes down pretty quick, and then the game ends. I'll see you during the credits. so that is the end of the game. Thank you all for watching. If you stick around, I am going to talk a bit about this project Monotype that I'm doing. Otherwise, I'll see you later. I promise the next time the editing should slowly improve as I go through this. I'm still learning how to do it, so if you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. Otherwise, I will discuss Project Monotype now. So basically with Project Monotype, what I want to do is I want to go through all the gens with every single type. I have a spreadsheet on the side where I have them all listed out with the check marks and whether or not I managed to pass the challenge. Right now, water type for Gen 1 is marked with a orange box, meaning I did not finish it completely according to the rules. I did have to violate some rules for it. Hopefully, I'll be able to improve with battling as we go along and as we go into better generations for it. I'm more familiar with gens, the newer gens, and I tend to play them more than the older ones. And especially Fire Red and Leaf Green, I hardly ever go back to, so I'm not super familiar with them. But I should be very familiar with them by the time I finish this. So in regards to how I want to sort it about, make sure things are done, I'm not really sure if I will end up doing some gens later, some gens earlier, if I'll do all of them in order. So stay tuned for that decision. Otherwise, leave comments and suggestions down below on that as well. When Gen 10 comes out, if it gets announced on Pokemon Day, I will most likely do some runs in that regardless. But other than that, thank you for watching, and I will see you later.